In the heart of London, there is a world steeped in ritual and tradition. For nearly 1,000 years, the bar has been a magnet for some of the country's finest young minds.
Miss Piercy, in the name of the masters of the bench, I call you to the degree of the utter bar.
I'm nearly a barrister. I am a barrister now. Ooh, that's so exciting.
I'm very happy that I finished. Broke, 24, and I'm no longer a student, so it's very good.
The next step is to get a job in a barrister's chambers. Competition is intense. Only 1 in 5 bar students will succeed. But for those who make it, the rewards are huge. All young barristers have one thing on their mind: securing pupillage, an apprenticeship at a set of chambers. Anna de Warner-Kluger has a problem. She's got a pupillage interview, but she's failed and must resit one of her bar exams. To get the job, Anna will have to give the performance of her life.
It's so difficult because there are so many people going for so few places, and that's where it's tricky. Yeah, we'll see. It should be fine. It should be absolutely okay. As long as I just stay calm and be the way in which I normally am, it should be fine.
Iqbal Muhammad wants to practice as a barrister in family law.
I'm very, very nervous, very stressed, quite anxious. It's a big interview that I've got now. It's the first round interview at One Hill Court, which is a very, very well-known specialist family set. And I've come all the way down from Birmingham for this interview, which is supposed to be 10 minutes. But I'm quite excited as well, actually.
Anna and Iqbal are applying to chambers within the Inns of Court. Anna faces 3 interviews today, whereas Iqbal will have just 10 minutes in which to impress.
Am I late? I've just seen all the others.
Anna is seeking a pupillage in criminal law.
Try and relax.
Thanks.
Okay, Anna, I'm Mita Regani, this is Bernard Richmond. This is going to be your personal interview.
Okay.
So, how would your friends describe you?
Oh, confident, somewhat argumentative. I'm quite passionate about what I believe in.
And are you happy to listen to other arguments whilst you're presenting your view?
Yes, and having done philosophy, actually, I like to. Lots of people tend to get a little bit angry when you have a discussion with them. They seem not to be able to hear other people's opinions and then come back with their argument. They tend to get quite irate and go, well, you're wrong and I'm right. And I quite like...
In that voice, do they?
Exactly that voice. But I quite like it when I have heated discussions with people, because I think the only way in which you can fully form your own opinions on things is to hear the other side, and you can make your argument stronger from hearing the other side because you know what they're going to say.
God, I wish I drank alcohol, you know. Could do with the whiskey. I've never had one, but it's a good time to find out what it's like. The stress of it was much worse than the interview. And it's from 30, they whittle it down to 10. So there's a 1 in 3 chance, so I thought, pretty reasonable odds, not that bad.
Give us a 2-minute potted history of your life, focusing on the high spots.
I went to a very nice school on a scholarship, which was really nice because it exposed me to things I probably wouldn't have been exposed to, developed my interest in music. I went to a nice university, which wasn't my initial university of choice, but it worked out better. So I got to be president of my students' union and host 2 summer balls while wearing a tiara.
So
Both
you don't like
years.
things where you have to wear something on your head?
Well, it was quite nice.
That's quite a good job for it, isn't it?
Oh, completely. And did the law conversion and then did bar school, which I've obviously enjoyed much, much more. And now I work as a project management administrator for an office furniture company. Is that a high point? I'm not sure. Okay.
It took Kat Piercy 4 years to be called to the bar, but she's struggling to find a job.
Yesterday I was on 10 rejections. Today I'm on 11. Woohoo! So basically I have 1 Chambers left to hear from. It's a very prestigious set. I think it will just be the same again. So another rejection, 12 down, none to go, and 2 more years of working at least. So I'll just have to apply again.
Middle Temple is one of 4 inns of court to which all barristers must belong. The Temple's calendar is sprinkled with social occasions, giving students the opportunity to rub shoulders with some of the most successful lawyers in the world.
Which one's left to come?
20 Essex Street.
Right.
Exactly.
I was a pupil there. They turned me down.
But chances are it's a rejection this late in the day.
Paul Darling QC works in construction law, one of the specialisms to which Kat aspires.
One thing I think you ought to think about doing is getting people to look now at your form.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that the reality is you're very talented, so I'm told, and I'm sure you are. But the point is, what you've got to do is get that across in the form.
I will get there one day. I'll just keep going at it.
Well,
I know that. I'm not going to give up.
I'm sure you will. But equally, one of the things that we want to do is to try and help you through that process as much as we can.
Faster.
Well, and faster.
Anna's final interview begins with the toughest challenge of the day.
The question I want to ask you about, I don't know if you've read in the news about the mother who's asked doctors to give her daughter a hysterectomy. Have you read about this case?
Yeah.
Can you put forward for us 3 arguments in support of the mother's position?
It will provide a better standard of life for her daughter in the future. Secondly, it will cause a lot of trauma to the daughter if a hysterectomy is not provided. It will cause a lot of trauma to her right now. And thirdly, it's in her daughter's best wishes. I don't know whether there's enough of a distinction for that third one.
Let me try and help some more. I'm
Okay.
thinking really about the issue of consent. How does the issue of consent have a bearing on the argument?
Even though she has a limit, I'm not sure of her precise age right now, but even though she has a limited mental ability, that doesn't necessarily detract from her ability to consent to this operation.
Is that right?
Well, I'm not sure how poor her interaction is at the moment.
Let's assume, for the sake of argument, she's got a mental age of a 6-month-old baby. How does that affect the issue of consent?
The problem there is that if she does have the mentality of a 6-month-old baby, she won't be able to provide consent for this. But as much as she's not able to consent to it, she's not able to not consent to it, which would shift over to her mother deciding what happens. But then it needs to be ensured that the consent her mother is giving on her behalf has been well thought out and is in the best interest of her daughter.
That's it.
Okay, hope the afternoon goes well. Hi, Mum. The first one was okay. I think the second one went quite well, and the third one was awful. It was really bad. Yeah, it was about, the mum that wants her daughter who's mentally disabled to have a hysterectomy. You've seen it in the news? It was about that. And he was asking me all these questions, and I've read it and I know about it, but I don't know, how old she is, how old her mental age is, da 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 da. And it was giving arguments for and against, and I did kind of mess that one up.
I think that you're going to have to be a little bit realistic, to be blunt. And I'm afraid I went through this as well. So no. The reality is that the absolute stellar intellectual sets are looking for the absolute top first-class degree.
Yeah.
And you haven't got one, and nor have I.
That sounds right. I mean, I think one of the things I've always looked at is I've always wanted to go to the best places.
I mean, there's no suggestion that you should be going to anything other than a really good set, in my view. But just knock out the top 6.
Okay.
When you applied to them before, they've turned you down.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, you applied to Moncton or not?
Yes, I did, yeah.
And what did they say?
No. And not even to interview.
And you presumably applied to Brick Court, Essex Court, Blackstone,
Yeah.
20 Essex Street,
Yeah.
1 Essex Court,
Yeah.
3 Verulam Buildings.
No.
I think we should think about you going to 3 Verulam Buildings. I mean, applying to 3 Verulam Buildings. They're a very good set.
I've known from being at university how hard it is to get into this career, which is why I think at the moment I'm still not completely depressed by it. I mean, every rejection is, you just think, crikey, when is someone just going to give me a chance? But I've always known it's going to be hard, and I guess that's something that's going to make it even more worthwhile when I get it. And maybe I'll be that little bit more experienced, that little bit more mature, so that once I do get it, I'll be really good at it, rather than going fresh from bar school and maybe being a little more inexperienced. So I have that on my side, and everything happens for a reason.
There are now more law students than ever before, but the number of jobs at the bar remains the same.
My pupillage, and people have to tell the students this nowadays, they look at me in disbelief. I only ever had 1 pupillage interview. It was a much smaller and easier thing in those days. I think now it is much more difficult to get a good pupillage. And I think one of the challenges that we as a bar have got is to work out how it is that we can increase the number of pupillages whilst at the same time providing the funding that means that people will be able to take advantage of those pupillages and won't start their careers with all this horrendous debt. I think it's a big challenge.
Birmingham is the largest legal centre outside London, and St Philip's is one of the busiest chambers. A team of clerks manage barristers' diaries and negotiate their fees. Head clerk is Mark Mansell.
No clerk wants to be thought of as clerking a Muppet Chambers or a Muppet barrister, and I'm fortunate that I don't do either. We've got a very good chambers, a very good setup, and I am fortunate to have a very good team of barristers behind me.
Louise McCabe has been a barrister for 12 years, specialising in divorce law. She's working with a solicitor to persuade their client to settle his divorce out of court.
It comes to a point where it's effectively going to be a commercial decision, right, because you're going to spend £10,000 finding out whether you're going to get your best case or your worst case scenario. She's going to spend £10,000 to do the same, and who profits out of that? The lawyers. Right. So I think you can say, thank you very much, Louise, that's very interesting, but I choose to have my fight, and I would rather pay the. I mean, I've had people say to me before, I'd rather give the money to the lawyers than I would to her. I don't personally think that's particularly sensible. It's absolutely your choice. So we'll look at that, and if we can, by the end of the afternoon, I think we would have done you a service if we can walk out of here knowing that there's an offer that Claire can make.
High maintenance McCabe, as we refer to her. I must confess she's very well liked. She's very busy, and for her general level of experience, she's probably streets ahead of everybody in Birmingham.
I've done, that's her bike right, that's it in the shed. There's an ongoing auction that's going on at eBay tonight, and that's where...
Oh, it's her bike.
It's a similar bike, and...
Someone's selling it.
No, really. No, it's not hers.
Right, well...
It's a similar bike, and it's worth up to 18,500. It's a matter
Well,
of debate.
now, of course, I don't know anything about the... Do I know anything about the mileage?
You do, yeah. The mileage for that one is 9,000, so...
You know what the mileage on that is?
5.5 maximum.
Well, look, do you want to... Why don't we send this to the side and say... We'll get some copies of this before we leave Chambers. Claire can send it.
It's just...
I'd like you to agree.
No,
Mind you, that's of course current bid, isn't it? Have you got...
It's current bid, and I'll watch it tonight.
Well, then you'll have to let Claire know on Monday.
Right.
When does the auction end?
Tonight, 8 o'clock.
Right, okay.
Right.
We'll all be watching.
Yeah.
Iqbal has lived in Birmingham all his life, and his upbringing shaped his ambition.
My mum got divorced twice, so I had very early exposure to, family law as a system and family law practitioners, barristers and solicitors. I found it quite interesting, and I thought, the legal professionals had a potential here, much more than in any other area of law, to affect somebody's life and affect their emotional interests and deliver for them something, that they really, really wanted, much more than money, a peace of mind, a just settlement. So it was something that really, really attracted me to law itself from the very, very beginning.
Iqbal is torn between pupilages in London or Birmingham. Today he's got an interview at St Philip's.
St Philip's is a good mix of all of the positive things about London Chambers and all of the benefits, of the provinces, basically. So that's one of the reasons why I applied, and also it's one of the best chambers in Birmingham. I think it's up there in the top 2, so that's the reason I applied here.
There are 30 candidates competing for 4 places.
Not at stake. It's a pretty difficult chambers to get into, and I'm sure the calibre of the candidates will be very, very high today, which is quite stressful.
It'll be a fortnight before he finds out whether he's got the job. Louise has now spent 4 hours unravelling the financial details of her client's 11-year marriage.
This level of sort of bitterness and emotion is quite usual. It's quite usual, and what is so difficult is, of course, for a human being, it's all about the emotion. I'd be exactly the same if I was in his position, but what I'm having to tell him is, leave that completely to one side, ignore it, and I think that's very difficult for a person to do. So it's still very raw, and it can be very raw 10 years on in plenty of cases. So, right. If I speak completely bluntly, I think it would be foolish of you not to make an offer, to try. I'm not saying she'll accept 10. She may say, no, I want to have my fight, and actually 10 is too low, and I'd rather go and spend it on the lawyers than let him get away with having that. But to just absolutely stick to our position and not make any offer.
Yeah.
Now we've looked at the figures, seems to me, I wouldn't want to do that with my money. I mean, look, I'm talking myself out of a 3-day job. I'll probably end up out of court those 3 days, so there's no benefit to me in you settling this, but I just think it would be wrong of us not to try.
Yeah. Do we have to make it 10,000 though? Can we make it 5? Can we play brinkmanship? Go right to the days, court days, right? Make her spend the money?
No, because, let me answer that completely honestly. £5,000, I wouldn't suggest you make that offer because it's very, very easy to turn down. It's not a well-pitched offer. 10, I think, is unlikely to be accepted, but might be. They might sit there and go, God, that's a really well-pitched offer because we think we can do better, but it's just enough that we think, oh, all right, we'll take it. We can't really do brinkmanship because your costs are all incurred. You know, Claire's got to make me a bundle. You know, the other side are going to have bundles. My brief fee will become payable. I mean, you can't ring up 5 o'clock the night before and say, well, some people try to, but, you know, so costs are running from this point. It's not all £10,000 on the day of the hearing. The costs are incurred from this point onwards. So I think it's been quite a long afternoon and you probably need to go away and have a think about what I've just said and you know, what the afternoon has been about. And let Claire know as soon as you can. And if your answer is against, I suppose, my advice, that you don't want to make an offer and that you just want to bat on, then if you could drop something in writing in response to her statement. But just give yourself a bit of a break. You know, that doesn't have to be sort of, you know, by Monday morning as well.
Yeah.
That was quite a long conference, yeah. What was that, 4 hours? I think we knew that was going to be a long conference. Yeah, the usual length is, you know, probably a couple of hours max. Really?
Yeah, or give me, if you want to talk it through, just give me a call. All right then. Bye. He's a bit stressed. I think he might be on his way to the pub to think it over.
Really, I mean, I defy anybody to come along in a situation where their marriage is broken down and apply strict logic. So you have to make such an allowance for human feelings, but at the same time you have to make very clear that that has no interest to the court and no place in the court's decision.
The average debt for a newly qualified barrister is £35,000. While searching for pupillage, they must make a living, and for Anna, that means a job in a furniture shop.
We do a lot of work for big law firms, actually. But this is sort of a typical executive's desk. I quite like this desk, actually. I think it's really nice. And I can't get it to move because it's far too technical for me, but the top slides across and back, so all your storage is hidden, which is quite nice, a bit different. I just finished law school, wanted to start work as soon as possible so I could pay some of it off. And then I came in and they said, we're looking for a project management administrator. And we think that the skills you've got, being able to do lots of things at once and relating to different people, would be really helpful. And so then they offered me the job and I started about 2 weeks later, which was a big thing for me because I wanted to start work as soon as possible, once finishing the BBC, so that I could start paying it off. I hope it hasn't had a negative effect. I appreciate that obviously it's not legal. I mean, I love working here and the people are great, but I've never had a burning desire to learn about office furniture.
Kat has found a job in a London law firm, but it isn't a pupillage.
I'm a paralegal, which is somewhere between an administrator and like a lawyer's assistant.
But paralegaling doesn't pay well.
Welcome to my prison. My dear father has given me money sort of as and when I've needed it. And so I owe my dad. He very kindly makes a note of every penny that I owe him, including like £4 for shampoo or something. So I owe my dad just shy of £10,000. I don't know what his chances are of getting that back, but you know, he's hopeful. I owe a student loans company. Well, my dad will tell you how much I owe them. A lot. And then I have overdrafts. So, no, haven't really paid off much of my student debt. I'll get there.
Iqbal has been shortlisted for the pupillage in London.
I'm feeling quite confident because I think by the second round you know more what they're looking for, whereas the first round I always feel is quite arbitrary. If they like you, they like you. If they don't like you, they don't like you. There's nothing that you can really do to sort of, you know, other than be a different person. And in the second round, you just have to prove to them that you have the sort of legal skills and you have the ability to be a good barrister, which is why, you know, I've got stronger hopes for this round. I've done my preparation. Probably haven't prepared as much as I should have, but, you know, see how it goes.
Anna's just found out she wasn't shortlisted after her interviews, but she's been invited back to be told why not.
It's going to be really good because you don't normally get feedback like this. It's normally a one-lined email. So it's going to be great. Well, sort of great. It's going to be great to get it. It might not be in itself great.
Right, what I did, because I promised I would, was to speak to a couple of the people who interviewed you and have a look at the feedback sheets from the interview. And it's no secret that in our interview we thought you did really well, but balanced against the other things, you came out as a candidate who was good, but there were better. And that's the point. The point is not that you're not up to it, not that you won't make a good pupil, but there are other people who come across and they present themselves even better. So you have to think before you speak. There are some bits about your presentation that I noticed that you might want to think about as well. When you're making a serious point and you decide that you're going to make a serious point, you don't want to do anything which undermines the impression that you are capable of making a serious, well thought out point. And one of the things you do is that you put on these voices of what people are saying.
Okay.
You were telling us about how people would react to a scenario. And right in the middle of quite a sensible analysis of what was going on, you'd suddenly almost do an impression of the way they would be. And it was incongruous, and it just made you look a little less clever, a little less articulate. If you give people the impression that you will go so far with a serious argument and then you'll take fright and run, they won't take you seriously. What I wanted to ask you about as well while I've got you here is why on earth you're working in a furniture shop rather than doing some...
I wanted to ask you about this as well. It's obviously not what I want to do, but it's given me flexibility if I need to go to interviews, if I need to go and do things. I've got flexibility to have time off work. It's paying me really well.
But most other people in your position are out there working as paralegals, doing advisory work, trying really hard to get their CV improved with legal experience. And of course you've not done a law degree.
Yeah.
So having done a CPE, you've come to law late, you've done a year, you've done your BVC, which you didn't get through entirely first time.
Yeah.
Have you got through that now? Is it all finished?
I have civil on the 19th of January.
Right, which you've got to get through. And here you are doing a job which is right away from law. It's got no legal input to it at all. So you've done 2 years of law, the second year of which did not go entirely successfully. And now you're doing something away from law again.
Yeah.
Now, unfair as it is, what sort of impression does that give?
Completely. I am really grateful.
No, it was a
because I won't get feedback like this, and I knew that you'd just tell me without trying to be really nice and just say nice things, which doesn't help.
Yes, I'm regrettably not known for being nice.
It's nice to know that it wasn't necessarily that I was bad, that I'm still a good candidate, but there are others who are better. There are always other people who are better, but it's just more comforting than just thinking, I messed the whole thing up, I'm a bad candidate. So that was good. And he's right. I did the law conversion, did the BVC, it's been 2 years, and now I'm doing non-law. I need to be back in the law. I need to be back in it. So that's what I'm doing this evening.
I think on balance, I did much better in my first round interview than my second round, which is annoying because the first round had nothing to do with law and the second one was all about law. Now I just have to wait. They give the results in August. St. Philip's give the results in August. I have no more interviews at the moment. So, you know, it's been okay. I just have to wait.
Whether he gets a job in London or in Birmingham, Iqbal's apprenticeship would expose him to some of the more harrowing elements of family law.
No, not the judge, no.
At St. Philip's, Alistair MacDonald handles family disputes where children are at risk.
Alistair deals exclusively with public law care cases. Biased as I am, he's without doubt, I think, one of the best junior barristers for care in Birmingham.
Alistair is starting the most demanding case of his career. He's representing a man whose baby has been taken away from the family home after suffering a fractured skull.
Right, this is the bar, as in barristers at the bar. Barristers sit along here, instructing solicitors sit with the clients behind in order for them to be able to give us instructions as the hearing proceeds. And obviously the judge sits up there. Now we go in order, so I just need to work out, I think I'm probably going to be roughly about here. The key is being, for a hearing like this, is being very organised indeed. It's something they teach you at bar school called fact management, and the key to a case like this is fact management. Knowing exactly what happened, at what time, on what day, in order that you can pick out patterns, inconsistencies, and the management of the facts is essentially the basis of the case, really. We're trying to figure out essentially what happened. We're trying to get as close to the truth as possible. It's essentially about an injury to a very small child. It's about whether that injury is accidental or non-accidental, and if the injury is found to be non-accidental, it's about whether the judge can determine on the balance of probabilities who may have caused that injury.
There are 5 other barristers in the case. Jeremy Weston is representing the interests of the child.
In this case, neither parent is able to give an explanation as to how this child received a massive skull fracture. On any version of events, something has gone wrong if a child is presented to a casualty department with a fractured skull. Ordinarily, children do not have a fractured skull unless there has been some significant accident, and normally you'd expect a carer, a parent or whatever to be able to tell you that something happened, the child was dropped from a height or was involved in a road traffic accident, or it's a non-accidental injury, which obviously is an inflicted injury.
There are about 35 experienced barristers in Birmingham who specialise in childcare cases.
We know each other well, both in terms of being against each other in cases now for some years, and we also know each other socially. I like to think it's a bit like professional footballers, really. You know, I'm sure that, I don't know, Rooney and Gerrard see each other at parties and maybe have a drink at the bar, but when it comes to Saturday afternoon, they play like demons for their own team, notwithstanding the fact they know each other. And I think it's a similar thing at the bar, really.
That's true, that is true. I see myself as the Gerrard, not the Rooney, by the way.
At Middle Temple, it's Grand Day, the highlight of the inn's social calendar, and Iqbal's got a ticket.
Today's a qualifying session, which is basically one of the events that you have to attend before you can get called. You're supposed to do 12 before you're allowed to get called, and I haven't done quite as much. I've done about 9, I think. And this one is it's a black tie dinner, so it's quite a formal event.
Qualifying sessions include lectures, debates and recitals, but Grand Day is the most impressive dinner of the year.
This is, it's in honour of the qualifying session, if I'm completely honest. but also the fact that I've forgotten how to do it. How embarrassing. And the tie is not going in. I forgot. How to do it.
In the servery. The starter tonight is soup. Those of you who are on the bench are having lobster and crab soup. Those of you who are in the hall are having a pumpkin and sweet potato soup.
Come in, Joe.
How are you?
Very well, Joe. Black tie. This is the biggest night of the year for us, yes. Because all the students could be black-tied, which will be unusual this evening, definitely for the students. But it's a big, big occasion. That's why the silver's out, candelabras everywhere. The hall really does look the business. Master Seabrook's in his dinner suit and he looks absolutely superb.
The occasion honours the outgoing Master Treasurer, Robert Seabrook, QC.
It's the big festive occasion of the year. It's been going on in some form since medieval times. It's an excuse to really put the boat out and invite distinguished people to share the evening.
I think it is very, very pompous from the outside, but it's not. This is not what we do every day, and it's not what we do every week, and it's not what every qualifying session looks like. It's a rarity, it's quite exceptional, just like an ordinary member of the public, when he attends a wedding, he dresses a bit differently, dresses a bit more formally. So I think it's okay, because it's, in perspective, it's a very, very small part of what the inn does.
It is remarkable how much the students enjoy coming. I mean, you can see today the student places and indeed barristers' places are all taken up, and so they seem to thoroughly enjoy it, and you know, it's a lovely opportunity for all the inn to be together. Usually have a starter, have a main course and have a dessert. So after that, have coffee, go home. That's it, I think. That'd be quite amazing, I think, if they get strippers for Grand Day. That'd be amazing. But I don't think Middle Temple have got any strippers lined up for the evening, so I'm really sorry to disappoint you about that. Pheasant. Damn it. I feel very familiar with this home because I've been here so many times. So it's quite nice to see it looking very different and looking very, you know, done up. But I'm not overwhelmed by it now. But I can imagine some people are. I mean, if this is the first qualifying session you've done, God, it must be awful. You must think that this would be hell to do 12 of these.
Anna has completed her qualifying sessions, but she can't be called to the bar until she passes her resit.
Right now I'm revising for my civil exam on Saturday. See, I started ages ago. I typed up all of my notes again and then wrote them all out here, and then I condensed them down again into these handwritten notes, trying to get them, well, as short as possible again, really, and then condense them down again into little sort of cards that I can carry about with me, which are handy because if I'm travelling to work or I'm on a bus or a train somewhere, then I can just flick through and read through it. It just keeps me thinking about it. I'm not so sure that it makes me learn it, but it just keeps my brain thinking about what I need to think about. Saturday's exam is very important. It's... Yeah, I don't know, it's difficult to put into words how important it is because it's 40 questions in civil, and that's all that's standing between me and my BBC.
In the Birmingham childcare case, all the medical evidence has now been heard, and it hasn't made Alistair's job any easier.
In terms of a case I want to run for the father, and the case that I'm instructed to run, which is that the father did not inflict the injuries, I'm not entirely where I wanted to be. At the start of a case, it was possible, on the evidence that the court had before it, that the injuries could have happened over a very wide spectrum of time, the vast majority of which my client, the father, wasn't present for. The evidence that we've had from both the experts and the mother has considerably narrowed that time frame, and it's narrowed it to the point where the only potential perpetrators of the injuries, the only two people that had the opportunity to do it, are likely to have been my client or the mother. The parents are still together. The parents are still in a relationship. They are in a very close relationship, actually. They clearly find the relationship they have extremely supportive. And within the context of that relationship, as I say, their case is that whilst they have to acknowledge that the child did suffer injuries, that they did not cause those injuries.
Louise's divorce case has ended up in court. This morning she'll be cross-examining her client's ex-wife.
What he wishes to achieve, which is absolutely not to have to give her a penny, I'm not sure those chances are brilliant. The chances of my case that I'm running for him, which is an equal division, are probably a bit better, although not guaranteed. And we have, for instance, say, 30-page schedule of furniture and contents that actually neither of the barristers nor the judge have sort of made any reference to yet, and we're steadfastly refusing to do so. But at some point the judge is going to have to decide who has taken what furniture, what is the value of what's been taken, what's the value of what's been left, and who should have what's been left. We don't even agree what furniture is presently in their marital home. So that's what's making it very difficult. We just can't agree about anything. Actually, he's asked me yesterday or Monday, do I think they're crazy? The costs in this case are £85,000 between them. Do I think he's crazy? And I said, no, I think you're human. I think you are, it's all very well, whatever, I can look at this with a sort of cold and rational eye, but that's not what this is about. This is the breakdown of a marriage, isn't it? This is, you perhaps would argue about contents if you were grieving and bitter and wounded, and both of them are. That there's obviously a high level of feeling, not positive feeling, but feeling still in that room, I think.
I'm going to start by asking her about what her housing needs are, and we've got a murky cohabitee in the background, and we don't know anything about what he earns. And she says he earns £13,000 a year. She says that she doesn't know anything about what his assets are, even though they've been living together for 2 years. She doesn't know what he got in his divorce settlement. So I'm always a bit nervous, yeah. I think that's helpful. You need a bit of adrenaline in these long cases to keep you going.
This is the judge's chambers where we're conducting the hearing. So it's not in a big courtroom, as probably you normally imagine. That's where the judge sits, and I've been sitting here. So I sit here, my client's there, my solicitor there, and then ranged along the other side of the table are the other parties. And then when people have been giving evidence, they've been sitting at the end of the table there. I think it's probably better for the parties to be in a room like this. They're probably more relaxed, but it's actually harder for us. It's quite intimate, you're sort of cross-examining somebody that's just sitting virtually alongside you. You haven't got that kind of space. We've also got 5
bundles that, you know, trying to fit them all kind of on here and around you is not so easy. So I have to say, I prefer being in a courtroom, which is a shame because most of my cases are conducted in a room like this, or smaller actually.
Morning, Alison.
Morning, how are you?
Tired.
Yeah,
Too late tonight, too early in the morning.
I was 4:15 this morning.
5:30, I'm
Very
afraid.
good.
Not that it's a contest.
No. In common parlance, I think we're on a sticky wicket. We have also a situation now that I've received the mother's written closing submissions overnight, and she appears to have changed her instructions to her legal team, and those submissions argue for a finding against the father. So that is also something that we're going to have to deal with today, first in conference with the father, and then I'll also have to deal with that within my closing submissions.
And the Guardian's position, you'll see, is still neutral.
Okay, thanks for that.
Right,
I will,
I'll have a look at yours now.
Yeah, I'll
Right.
take some instructions, and if there is any change in light of the mother's position, I will let you know. All right?
The mother's position during the hearing was that she did not expressly say in evidence that it was the father, and she was pressed as to whether that was her view. She was pressed by me, she was pressed by others, and she wouldn't say it was him. The way in which the case has been put has implicitly suggested it might be him, but now the written submissions in fact expressly say that it's the father. So the mother is now putting forward a case which is inviting the judge to actually make a finding that it was the father. So that is a significant change in stance. And I think it's rather surprised Alistair.
I'd been cross-examining the wife for about half an hour, 40 minutes, and she just needed a break. We all needed a break. Yes, yeah. So, yeah, it's quite uncomfortable in there for her, I think. It's fairly unpleasant.
We're in court. My wife is being cross-examined by a barrister. It's quite upsetting, really, to see someone you once loved being torn to pieces, you know?
I think there is an element of thinking, oh gosh, you know, this was a marriage and now it's come to this, sitting across other sides of the table and, you know, paying my barrister to rip her into shreds, you know, which I don't think it's very dignified for anybody, but I'm afraid it's what the case has come to and what the personality involved has kind of led to, I suppose. But, you know, there were a few moments where she gave evidence, didn't she, saying, yes, he was a very good husband, he was very supportive, he was a very helpful husband, and I just thought that must have rung such a chord with him.
Yeah, I think that's when he got sad.
I'm sure he did get sad then.
We're almost home now.
This is my chauffeur. As a fat cat barrister, obviously, I employ a permanent chauffeur to drive me around wherever I want to go. It's my husband, Richard, who has also been in court in Birmingham today. So it's quite nice. We drove in together this morning and we can drive home together this afternoon.
The divorce case has ended with an equal division of the matrimonial assets.
This is Martha.
Oh, gorgeous girl. And she's quite pleased to see her daddy, aren't you?
Come on, Martha.
Good girl.
As you can see, it's pretty much done. Give or take, you know.
Just a bit.
All over by the
window
shouting.
dressing. Just a bit of window dressing required.
That's where we work, at that table. No, neither of us touch alcohol. That's just we have in case somebody comes around who insists on having a drink. But we're both teetotal. Most barristers are, actually. I find a cup of chamomile tea and a hot bath to be the best way to relax in the evening. Don't bother with alcohol.
Louise's client may have had his day in court, but it has cost him over £50,000.
Do you know, I think today has been really hard. He said
This evening, when we were having a conversation after court, he said he was surprised it hadn't settled. And yeah, I think he has found it really hard. I think it is a hard process. The main thing it has done to me is make me very sure that I never want to get divorced. And if I do get divorced, I do not want to go through this process.
The childcare case has also reached a conclusion.
We've just had judgment on the final substantive day of the case, and the judge has made her findings about what happened on the day in question to the child, and the judge has found that the injury sustained by the child was the result of a very tragic accident at the hands of the father.
Notwithstanding a number of months when the father hasn't had any explanation for how this child got a skull fracture, he has today, just before we're about to give submissions, he's indicated that he wants to make a disclosure, basically. And he's disclosed that in the course of playing with the child slipped from his hands, fell to the floor, and that's how he got a skull fracture.
I think from the father's perspective, I think that he accidentally injured the child in a pretty terrible accident, and I think just speaking for myself, if you don't admit doing something wrong at the outset, it becomes harder and harder and harder to admit it. And I think he just got into a situation where it was just really difficult for him to tell, firstly, his family, and secondly, his lawyers, what had actually happened. So we arrived at a situation that for the past 8 months he's been carrying around this terrible, terrible secret, which today he finally felt able to tell me and my instructing solicitor, and then to tell the mother. It's a good result for the father, the judge finding that it was an accident, because it does increase the chances of the children being able to come home in due course.
After 12 applications for pupillage, Kat has at last been shortlisted for an interview.
I got called back for a second round interview. There was 2 pupillages and 15 people got called back. So my odds were, I had like a 1 in 7.5 chance of getting the pupillage, which is quite good actually. I came out and knew I hadn't got it, which is a shame. And I didn't get it, which you sort of expect the letter, you get the letter and go, I haven't got it, and you know it's really upsetting. Like, I was in tears, and I promised myself I wouldn't cry. I knew I wasn't going to get it, so it wasn't a surprise. But you just can't help it because, you know, you're so set on just wanting to start your career as a barrister. You have to stay determined. Like, I came into this wanting this career, almost from the offset with my eyes wide open. If you start thinking, oh, I'm never going to get a pupillage, well then no, you won't. If you think, I'm going to do it this year and next year, and if I don't get one, then I give up, well, then you don't deserve one. If you really wanted to do this, you wouldn't give up. And I won't give up. I'll just keep going.
You need a certain amount of determination, probably, to do this job. You know, barristers would say to me, oh, don't come into this, you know, there's no future in it and it's too hard, and go and be a solicitor. And I think, you know, you had to be able to completely ignore that. You had to do it, want to do it enough that you were going to ignore everything that was said to you that was negative. And I would probably say the same to people now, and expect that if they want to do the job enough, they'll ignore me and they'll be a great barrister.
Anna passed her resit, but her overall grade is just a competent.
So I finally have my results, and I got 77.5%, which is okay, considering it's caused me so much trouble. It means that that's practically the last exam I'm ever going to take, and that paying and working so many jobs to study for 4 years has finally paid off. That's what it means, because in a weird way, although I don't have pupillage, it does kind of make all of it worth it.
It's a weighty document. What do you think this is? St. Philip's. Woo! I'll open it. Think it's going to be an offer? Because normally, if it's a rejection, it's a one-page letter. This will be... Thank you for attending the interviews on Saturday. We were impressed by you and pleased to offer you a pupillage at St. Philip's Chambers for 12 months, beginning October 2008. Then it's just the terms, I think. It's arguably the best provincial set there is. It's a really good pupillage award. It's a mixed common law chambers, so they do a bit of crime, civil. They have a very, very strong civil practice. And they've offered me pupillage starting next year. And you know, it's such a nice feeling to be offered pupillage. You know, it's such a relief. It's such a liberating feeling. I have to decide between two completely opposite pupillages. You know, the pupillages are completely at polar ends. One is in Birmingham, one is in London. One is at a very specialised chambers, one is at a general common law chambers. I really have to think about what I want to do.
In the end, Iqbal decided to stay in Birmingham and accepted the offer from St. Philip's.
I think the great thing about the bar is that to a certain extent your career is in your own hands. I mean, clearly there are a series of defined stages you have to go through. You've got to do your degree or your conversion course, the BVC, pupillage, and you strive to get tenancy. But if you are ambitious, there are opportunities to be had that will come your way with dedication and hard work. And I think that's one of the great things about the bar. It is one of those professions, I think, one of the last professions perhaps, where just plain hard work, wherever you come from, can get you where you want to go.
Next week, the search for pupillage continues and Anna gets some very good news.
Oh, that's excellent! That's really good! That's really good!
After 18 months in pupillage, Kokoli Pandey finds out whether she's got a permanent job.
It's a personal thing, you've given your all, and if that's not good enough, then it is going to hurt. I have prepared myself for that possibility, but I haven't prepared myself for hearing them say, "We don't want you in our chambers."
And at the Old Bailey, there's the first state prosecution of a murder.
I've got the most senior barristers against me. I've got the leader of the circuit and I've got the chairman of the criminal bar, 2 of the QCs against me.
The Open University has produced a free booklet featuring momentous legal cases which have changed the way we live. To get a copy, go to bbc.co.uk/barristers or phone 0870 900 0303.
On Newsnight, what will be the extent of the government's borrowing bombshell on Monday? Will Hillary Clinton really work in Team Obama? And we'll discuss Guns N' Roses' first album in 17 years. Join me at 10:30.
And that's after QI, next on BBC Two.